Mike, it's really great to talk to you today because we're here at Board of Advisors, and it's such a great group of CEOs and people who just want to charge up their life a little bit. And also, it's a good time for us to be humble and to learn from other people.
Yeah.
People that have gone before us, people that maybe are in a different industry that can give us a different perspective. And I love the perspective that you brought to BA this time, and I instantly connected with it because, there is business that's out there, and business is important. It consumes me for the most part. And I have always struggled to balance being a good husband, being a good dad, being a good business person. And there was something that happened that my wife and I did last summer. And I think this might resonate with you a little bit, and you might just be able to expand this and blow it up because I love your passion for fatherhood. We're supposed to be not just a good dad in our first ministry being to our family, but we're supposed to be a father to the fatherless as well. And we're just guys, and we need each other, right? So last summer, my wife and I decided that this summer we're going to take one day a week, and we're going to go to the river with our kids every Wednesday each summer. And I'll tell you what, it's a great idea when you're talking about it,
sure.
In theory. But when that first Wednesday came around, my schedule was loaded.
Everything hit the fan.
I forgot to really block it.
Wow.
And so the new rhythm of my wife and I being intentional for our family, it intersected with real life. And I got anxiety went up. I thought of nothing except everything that I had to do with meetings that I would have to cancel, but I had made a commitment to my family. And I've said vows to my wife. She's the only person in my life that I've said vows to.
Sure.
And the same patterns were starting to happen, the same arguments that my wife and I were starting to happen, like the stress. She doesn't like it when I'm stressed. She doesn't like it when I get emotional. It doesn't serve her in any way. She now has to deal with that among packing the cooler and getting all these other things ready to get to the river on time. And I had this moment. That was like, there was nothing more important than me being fully present with my kids right now. And I kept repeating it over and over to myself. I kept saying it over and over again until I locked in and was able to relax. And I just had this night and day shift. And I went back to my wife and I said, hey, I just want to apologize to you. I'm here. I'm fully present. And we had a great time, and then we hit it every Wednesday.
That's amazing.
So,
the greatest present you can give your children is your presence. And I think a lot of guys miss that. And what's important in your business when you're 80 doesn't matter at all. It really doesn't. The success of your children and their children, that's what you're thinking about at 80. So I always like to look forward and say, gosh, yeah, I have some pressing issues. This customer is making things very difficult right now, and I need to serve this customer. But if the phone rings and it's my son, I tell the customer, hold on. If I'm in the middle of a podcast and my son calls and he knows I'm filming, I say, you're going to have to cut and resection because I got to take this call. My son has access to me before the entire world.
That's beautiful.
That's the rule I made with him. He knows to give me respect in the moments that I need to work. But if he needs me, doesn't matter what it is.
That's fantastic. Wasn't it Solomon who wrote in Ecclesiastes, what's the purpose of gaining all of this wealth just to pass it over to a fool? So we need to be sure that we're not raising fools.
It's huge. That money, a lot of successful men want to pass their, inheritance to their families, but if they haven't been trained up by their father, the money will likely destroy them and will not go another generation. So the word says, leave an inheritance to your children's children. There's not going to be one if you don't train them up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Like one of the greatest, when you research what powerful, wealthy families have done with their wealth, they don't divide it.
Right.
To their children with inheritances, because when you divide your wealth, it's not as powerful.
You divide your children.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead they create, these trusts and family offices and avenues for, was it the Rockefellers, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Like the book that Garrett Gunderson wrote called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And what they did was they created this family trust. And then if you wanted to go to college, all you had to do was go to the family trust. The family trust would take a life insurance policy out on you. And then you would go and you would pay for your college, and then you would pay it back
That's
to the
fantastic.
family trust. And if something happened to you, of course, the life insurance policy.
Sure.
But But that's the level of standard that they had, is they would get a life insurance policy on you because they were going to be paid back no matter what you decided to do in college. So
It's huge.
I mean, I've never even really thought about that. As dads, I don't think a lot of us even really think about that.
No, I don't think we do either.
We just think about the time and our emotions.
Right.
But there's a greater responsibility here that transcends just our immediate,
It's true.
emotional needs.
It's true. And I think what a lot of men mistake presence for being in the room. Because if you're on your phone, you're scrolling, or you're taking calls, you're emailing, or you're texting, you're not present, period.
Yeah.
And putting it down is hard. We've become very connected to our companies, to the people that rely on us, to our employees, all of these things that don't really matter in the end.
Yeah.
And they do, but not as much as your kids. And if you can fully connect with your children, and one of the things I teach very busy dads is, how do you maximize those moments and really connect? And the key is, everything goes away, you're eye to eye, and that's it. And I had an older friend that told me, your kids might remember the house you grew up in. They might remember one or two of the toys they had as a kid, or maybe the car you drove if they liked it. But what they will never forget is the time you spent with them eye to eye and the time you did not.
That's fantastic. What I just did with my son before I came here today is I started an Apple Note, like a shared note, and it was like things we're going to do together. And, one of them was like, when my son was really little, he brought these like engineering plans. He's like, hey, Dad, he wanted a Iron Man costume for Halloween. And instead of just like a easy Iron Man costume, he sent me these engineering plans that we had to pay like $5 for. But it was how to make this Iron Man costume out of foam. Like multi-layers of foam and paint, and like it's a ridiculously like movie quality like prop costume. And I'm a busy dad, and he brings me this project, and that is not my skill set. I'm a broad strokes guy. I don't have an engineering brain. And so I bought the foam, and we started cutting it, and we were in a pile of, and it was just one of those projects that we could never quite accomplish together because of my schedule. And in addition to the things that I know we want to do, like go to the gym together,
right?
Do and a couple other things on the list, I put the Iron Man costume back on the list because we're
How old is he now?
He's 16.
That's fantastic.
But what's funny is that it's actually an adult-sized costume, so he wouldn't have fit in it anyway.
That is awesome.
But I always felt like I missed an opportunity to like do something great with him then. So I put it back on the list because it's not over,
That's fantastic. And, at 16, it's not too late. And at 35, it's not too late.
Right. Good
and
point.
That's the thing. You're not going to do a project like that with them at 35.
Yeah.
But they are still craving you as a father.
Yeah.
And many men who have been very successful, they realize they missed it. And they made some mistakes and they missed the time. But they think it's too late because their kids won't talk to them. And it's not.
What would you say to a guy that says, hey, I'm being a good dad because I'm providing for my family?
Right.
So I'm sure you come across that a lot.
All the time.
So how do you respond to that?
So what are you providing? If you're providing finances, that's fantastic. But guess what? If you lived in a double wide trailer and you were with them every day fishing, that would be a better childhood.
Yeah.
If you built this amazing business and they're living in amazing luxury, but you're not home.
Yeah.
And I say all the time, if you're winning at work, but losing at home, you've lost.
Yeah. There's another thing that happens to me a lot where even though I might be physically present, I'm not mentally present.
And that's what I was talking about.
And that's ridiculously hard to overcome sometimes because when your kids are little, they kind of need your physical energy.
Right.
And that's kind of easy to be distracted or thinking about something at work and to be, kind of present there. You can get through you can fake it.
Right.
But then when your kids are teenagers and they're experiencing something and you just don't have the emotional availability or the mental capacity to be able to have that conversation when they need to have that conversation with you, I think what it says to them is I'm not important to you.
It does say that. But the fatherhood code is because you have a coding inside of you to be a father. We have a gift that we don't know how to use to our advantage, and it's called compartmentalizing.
Okay.
Now, women know all about it because it drives them crazy.
Right.
But we can compartmentalize. And if we use that to our own advantage, and we say, okay, I can see clearly my child needs me. I'm going to compartmentalize my business, put it in a box, shut the lid. What do you need, honey? I got you. Cool. Great. An hour later, okay. We good? You want to go play with your friends? Awesome. Love you. Open the box. And if you can't put that box away for an hour for your children, the outcome's going to be really clear in the end.
Yeah.
And so I think, one of the things I try to tell men is you have the ability to think of nothing or everything at the same time, and just put it in a box and put it aside for the time that matters, because it might be a 4 or 5 minute conversation that they need from you to be present, eye to eye, listening, engaging, and that's all they need. And they run away happy. Thank you, Dad, and you're right back to work. And instead of saying, hey, I can't do that right now, I'm too busy, and you're stressed, your cortisol's flowing through you're freaked out. I live that life. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a serial entrepreneur. There's no way around it. You're going to have multiple companies.
Right.
We all do.
Correct.
And often with my son, what I would do when he was young, I worked from home, and he was homeschooled. So he didn't quite understand not to come into my office. So I made a deal with him. I said, if you need me and you see I'm in a meeting or something, come put your hand on my hand. Mm-hmm. And I will put my hand on top of your hand to let you know, okay, I recognize that you need me. I'm going to wrap this up to be with you. That worked pretty well.
We did the same thing, by the way.
That's amazing.
It's a beautiful tactic.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, somebody taught me that as a young dad, and it's worked. My kids still do it.
It's great. I don't even remember where I learned it, but,
yeah.
But my son will tell you that he is the most important person in my life. He will tell you that. Now, I'm not married right now, and that gives a huge advantage to me to be able to pour all of that time and effort into my son, being not married. Yeah. But even if I'm married, I think that my wife will know, hey, if we're in the middle of it, no, you're going to have to respect that. Because I think it goes God, spouse, kids, right?
It does.
Then work.
Without that foundation, that spousal foundation of a good relationship, they have nothing to learn from.
Exactly.
And if they don't realize that you've prioritized that, that's why a lot of people who are good at parenting say, hey, don't let your kids sleep in your bed. For my wife and I, especially during the summertime, now that my kids are teenagers, if we want time to reconnect or to talk about the events of the day,
right?
We just tell the kids, hey, bedtime for us is 10. And we shut the door and we're done.
Yeah.
Sorry. So if you have things to discuss,
yeah,
let's do it at 9.
It's a healthy boundary.
Exactly.
It is. And of course at 9:59 is when they think of something. But one thing I used to do with my son when he was little is he always, had a lot of things to talk about when it was bedtime. Right? All of a sudden he wants to open wide open.
Right.
So if his bedtime was 9:30, it was 9:15, but he didn't know it was 9:30. I knew that.
Gotcha.
So at 9:15, I'd put him to bed, I'd go in, I'd hang out with him, and that's when he would open up and share the things of the day. And he had 15 minutes, he thought he was getting extra. I had already scheduled it.
Nice.
And so that's something I did. Now at 18 years old, he knows that if he needs me, he's got me. Even this morning, he called and he knew I was in the meetings, and I called him back. I said, hey, what's up? And he goes, nothing, just wanted to say hi and see how your meetings are going. Wow. Awesome. And I'm like, that's great. And I said, I have a lot of meetings. Can I call you around 2? And he said, yep, I'll be ready.
That's awesome.
He's 18. He can understand that, But I still prioritized him. Even though I said, hey, I've got to take these. Is that okay? I don't have to ask his permission. But the fact that I did gave him a peace in knowing I'm first.
Yeah.
And I believe in 4 levels of parenting, something I learned in a great program. You go from caretaker when they're a baby to cop when they're about 2, 3 years old. Now you have to cop them. And the next stage is coach. And this is really hard for fathers. But at about 12 or 13 years old, you say to your son or your daughter, sit down. And they go, they do, but they're standing up like this in their head. And you can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
Especially with boys, but with girls too. And you say, okay, it's time for me to turn to coach. What that means is I want you to lay out 4 things that are really important to you, right? Girls are going to say, I want to go to the mall. I want clothes. I want, boys will say, I want a video game or I want a fishing pole. Whatever those things are, great. I'm going to work with you to help you get these things. But I have 4 requirements below that are non-negotiable. You do your chores without being asked. You read Bible 15 minutes a day. Whatever those things are. You respect your mom. You don't fight with your sister. Whatever those things are. If you'll do these things, I will help you. If you'll do these things, I'll help you get these things. Now, if you fail at these, my hands are tied. And I'm showing them a picture of how God is. God says, I have these gifts for you, but there are certain requirements.
Here's
if you love me, you will follow my commands.
Right.
You're teaching them how to access him, how to be obedient to him, as you're teaching them to be obedient to yourself.
Wow.
And it's powerful. Now, if you do a great job at coach, at about 19, 20, you get to be their consultant for the rest of their life.
How about that?
Yeah. And when they're 30 years old and they're having a problem with their spouse, who do they call?
Consultant is a fantastic word for that, because like, here's something that a revelation that I wasn't prepared for. It was when my daughter, so I've got girl, boy, boy. I've got 19-year-old, 16-year-old, 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And when my daughter was the first to hit high school, I realized that at that time in their lives, you are no longer their son. They do not revolve around you anymore. In fact, you begin to revolve around them. You become a moon to them.
That's a great analogy.
And
wow.
what's different is that we used to have the opportunity to parent them all the time, instant access, but now they have cars, they're out with their friends, they've got their own social life.
Right.
So what we do as parents is we fit 24 hours of parenting in the 15 minutes that we get to see them.
Sure.
So the pattern that emerges there for our kids from their perspective is, another lecture.
Yeah.
And I got to and I could see this happening in my daughter. I could see her shying away from me. She couldn't wait for me to move into what is it, the waning gibbous, or to turn from a full moon into a nothing. You know,
Sure.
She just did not have that access. And I told her, I said, I just had to stop, and I just had to have this out-of-body experience with her. And I just told her, I said, hey, listen, the reason why, first of all, let me apologize for bringing emotion to this conversation. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to calm down. But here's what I need you to know. I need you to know that what the level of emotion means is that this is a very important lesson that I need to make sure that you learn. So let's reapproach this conversation with that in mind. I'll bring my level of emotion down because your ability to receive from me is very low right now. I recognize that. Can we start again? And she was very receptive to that.
That's great.
And in fact, it has helped save my relationship with her because that's important. So
Yeah. One of the things I've done with, I had 3 stepchildren as well. And one of the things I've always done with them when, I have something I need to share with them and they're not receptive is invite them to an event. Like, let's go for a walk. Hey, let's grab our fishing poles. Let's go down to the lake for a minute. I know that side by side, I can have that conversation if we're doing something. Way easier than I can if I'm sitting on the couch lecturing them.
Great point. Well, Hey, I know we just have kind of a short time to just have a powerful conversation.
Oh my gosh.
But the wisdom in this conversation I'm going to take with me. And just really fortunate to get to know you. And I'm glad you're a part of BA and had a great time this week.
Thank you for your wisdom. And, we talked about partnering on some events down the road. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I love your heart for what you're doing. And we align so well. So thank you.
Okay.
Great to meet you, brother.
You too.